Humanity was at its last breath when a nuclear war started between the superpowers. The initial shock wave of the bomb had already taken several lives, but the main culprit was the heat and radiation, which made half of the world inhabitable. I was stuck in this nuclear bunker without a choice, listening to everyone's distempered souls. I hid in the corner as the unending spiral of thoughts made me hysterical. We will die locked up in here. The world is going to end. With each passing moment, the voices in my head and around me grew louder and unbearable until a hand gently touched my shoulder. It was my wife who stood near me with a warm, gentle smile and reassuring touch. Her face slowly approached mine as she whispered, "It's free real estate." The 2020 decade haven't had the best of starting. The tensions between Iran and America, forest fires in Australia, global pandemic and growing racism made us think, is the world going to really end? But if we just go back to 20th century, there's much more to experience. The 20th century started with a literal bang, because the heir of Austro-Hungarian Empire was shot dead. No way in the world a war was going to be initiated by a murder of Duke, right? Well, that's where you are wrong, my friend. Serbs didn't like what happened. Instead, a war started which led to the deaths of 15 to 22 million people. A big number, isn't it? Well, wrong again, because God was like, what's better than one disaster? A double penetration. In came the Spanish flu of 1918. Oh, fun fact by the way, it didn't originate in Spain, which again ended up killing 50 million people, and everyone thought the world was gone for better. But instead, League of Nations was created to reduce tensions and prevent future wars. Well, the Spanish flu also died down as the people who had it died or developed immunities, and so the world continued. In the background, a new empire rose. Oh yes, the USSR, the greatest meme of all time. Lenin came, died, making Joseph Stalin the supreme leader, which created the second greatest meme, socialism. It was supposed to be the Plato's next utopia, but ended up becoming George Orwell's dystopia. But what really gave people their depression was the economic depression of 1929. Most people got unemployed and had nothing to eat but their own despair. The hyperinflation made everything unaffordable. 11 out of 10 IGN cannot buy anything again. But the government ended up intervening and supported the economy with the government expenditure. Who thought giving free healthcare and education would cure the depression? And so the world continued. Well, in some part of the world, Mussolini cooked his fascist tortellini, Adolf Hitler got rejected from the art school, and the Empire of Japan attacked anything that came in their sight. The perfect recipe for a world ender. In 1939, Hitler had enough of the bullying from the victims of World War I and decided it was time to add one more tally to the number of times Poland was invaded, triggering France and Britain into declaring another war. So well for the League of Nations. Nietzsche's Übermensch and Hegel's idea of absolute state authority had a love child. The child was Nazi Germany's fascist philosophy. Nazi Germany conquered most of the Western Europe until 1940. The world had ended for most of Jewish people being tortured, stripped of their homes, put into concentration camps and gas chambers. War further escalated when Japan, without any reason, ended up bombing the Pearl Harbor. This unending war, which already had killed approximately 50 million people, was the world ender. But Germany ended up surrendering when the Soviet Union's troops entered, while Japan getting a double whammy from America led to its surrender. Well, Japan would take its revenge much later in future. The war ended, and so the world continued. While the Vietnam War, Korean War, and Cuban Missiles crisis were directly or indirectly had involvement of the two great powers, the US led the capitalistic side while the USSR led the socialist side. I mean, communism and socialism are all great and all, but as a meme, not as a system. I mean, the world was actually going to be in a similar situation to the story in the beginning if the Cuban Missiles crisis escalated. Fidel Castro had a strong alliance with USSR, which gave access to USSR to install missile launchers over the Cuban island. Although the USSR did back off because a nuclear war could have ended the world, the threat did continue, as in 1980 a false nuclear war alarm at US Aerospace Defense Command got a notice that there were 2,200 incoming missiles. Surprise, surprise, a malfunction in a 50-cent computer chip which led to a false alarm. While similarly in 1983, a Soviet computer malfunction almost fucked humanity over. Like, Jesus Christ, this is worse than the false alarm you have when you think your crush likes you. At least getting rejected would only end your life, but false nuclear alarm would end everyone's life. Sorry. Anyways, USSR, now weakened, was disbanded in 1991, ending the Cold War. And so the world continued. There have been way more close calls which could have ended the world. But the thing is, we weren't alive to experience that, or the event never took place. The marine isotope which made the world so cold that it nearly led to extinction of Homo sapiens, eruption of several supervolcanoes, comets, solar storms, wars, and plagues. But you know what's the good news? It is that the world has continued, and so has humanity also braced themselves for it. The past few centuries relatively were better than 99.9% of the history. Try to imagine living with the dinosaurs. I know, it is easier for the world to end with the amount of power we have in our hands. It is no doubt we humans will become even more advanced and even more dangerous in the future, but we also have made the world more livable. We humans enjoy more literacy, free time, safety, wealth, open-mindedness, rights, and much more. Of course, there are a few exceptions to it, but overall the world has become better. And if you beg to differ, then you are the exception. There's also a possibility that we could inhabit another planet, as we've already reached the moon and making our way to the Mars. I know, we are still far away. We have only gone as far as to the moon, which is just a moon, not a planet, and Elon Musk is still trying to get to Mars. But there's a chance, only if we are able to inhabit another galaxy or planet, we could carry the Earth within us. The legacy of Earth will live until we humans survive. So, until then, hopefully, the world will continue.